Wednesday night, Awesemo.com golf show, late night edition as always. Ben Raza, joined by Jason Roslin. We're here, WGC, Mexico. Excited? What do you think? Yay or nay? Right up top.
Right off the top, I'm excited because it's a great field. The course has actually been quite a surprise. It was a surprise the first year on how much the players liked it, the excitement that it provided. The first hole right off the bat, drivable par 4. So definitely provide some fun. In the crowds are going crazy. I just got done watching Tiger's interview, and every local reporter, you could tell. The people are really excited to see him. So I think the energy should be there, as long as he's somewhat in the tournament, which I expect him to be. So, yeah, I'm definitely excited.
It's a good one. I'm not a big non-cut guy. I've said that before many times. I'm strangely excited for this tournament, though. I don't know what it is. Obviously most WGCs are incredibly strong fields, but this is one I found I like the way kind of the guys were priced, and I just feel like I have a pretty good pulse on it. So we can get into it. We were talking a little before the show. It is kind of nice. We only have 70-something guys to really talk about.
Yep.
Usually we have to talk about, $150 or so. So we'll have plenty of time to, obviously, we got chat with various levels of intelligence tonight. We'll answer the smart people, ignore the dumb people, and we'll get after it. But where do you want to start? There's a lot of places we can get into.
Yeah, since there's only 70 players, we will probably honestly cover like 85 to 90% of them in the way we're going to do it. So we'll just start off with just a little bit of a recap. Last week, I was able to have a pretty decent week in my one against the grain lineup. And I think it's important to talk about this week. And this show may end up turning this week specifically into more of an ownership show, just because in a no-cut event, that's where you really got to take some leverage. And I know that we just released the ownership projections on the site, and we'll get into those. So also want to talk about just a little bit about game theory, because this lineup that I'm about to share with you that ended up coming in fourth in the big $100 last week, we talked on the show about stacking tee times and how that can kind of end up giving you an edge one way or the other. And it ended up not really being too much difference one way or the other, but I was able to find 6 guys and focus in on the 40 guys that I liked in that afternoon wave, and it came out of it, and all 6 guys were in the afternoon pairing. So I kind of just want to get your thoughts on game theory, if that's something maybe we should look at even more. Obviously not this week, but it's more kind of an academy thing going forward. Is it something that maybe we should pay attention to, even if there's no edge? Maybe just looking at stacking more tee times and honing in on that player pool a little more.
It's definitely something, I think it's pretty clear that it's something you want to take notice of and even incorporate. You just don't want to go overboard. I think that's where people get into trouble, not just with stacking tee times, with any of these unquantifiable kind of thing. It's something when I'm down to a 2v2 or I'm making enough lines, I say, you know what, let me pair. I like guys playing together. You've brought that up before. I do think there is something to that.
The drift effect, yeah.
Exactly. They can get hot together, but at the same time, I don't only do that. I don't over say, oh, I would have played this guy, but now he's got a bad tee time. I'm erasing him from the player pool. You don't want to go overboard with it. Obviously, a 70-man field, it's not suited per se to those kind of, pertinent correlations. But at the same time, I did do certain things within my lineups this week, whether it's a different skill set or a couple guys playing in their groups together to try to get some correlation.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's some into that, and we can kind of get into those plays a little bit. Now, JB Holmes, this is quite a number of tournaments in a row where these wet conditions, where on a bombers type course, or where length can give you an advantage, he just seems to play well. He did it last year at the Farmers in very similar conditions. Is that something that really should be on our radar?
It certainly is. He's kind of got that British Open vibe where he can play in the wind and the rain, plays incredibly slow. There's no doubt about that, but he's talented. He had that horrible 3-putt, but then he did make some very clutch putts to hold on to that. Obviously, JT wasn't up to what we're normally seeing, but you know what? You got to give credit to JB Holmes. He had many times to give it away, and he didn't.
So let's transition, and again, we will get into the plays this week. Like I said, we're probably going to cover about 85 to 90%.
Definitely.
So give me your thoughts just really quick from, maybe a guy that's, not a scratch golfer, but enjoys the game. Was that unbearably slow that you couldn't watch it? JB Holmes, talking about JB Holmes, of course, yeah.
No, I mean, to me, I have no problem with it from a viewership standpoint, to be honest. It doesn't bother me at all. I think if I was a fellow player, it would be more of a problem.
Sure.
So if they're not bothered by it, I would assume that they are, but maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind the down. I know golf can be very slow.
And deliberate, yes.
The girlfriend is 10 feet away from me, and she's nodding right now. She does not like JV Holmes. He's too slow. But at the same time, I don't think it's a viewership thing. It's more just it really is tough if a guy's trying to get in a rhythm and naturally plays faster than him. That could be a problem, I think.
No, I wonder if that's just part of his mentality. And when he gets into that, that kind of mode and that time, if he's getting under people's skin, and it could be kind of a game theory thing. Maybe it's just truly this is the way he plays or whatnot. But definitely wanted to get your quick thoughts. Also, one other thing that I found very interesting and was Justin Thomas putting. When the elements started to kick up towards the end of the day, he did it also at the British Open a couple of years ago when he played in dreadful conditions. He just can't make 4 and 5 foot putts. Is that a problem? I mean, what's going on there? It looked really bad, and he gave the tournament away.
JT's such a difficult guy for me. I don't know exactly. He does that sometimes. He really, it looked like that's a thing of the past, and it still flares up where it just goes off the tracks, and he just doesn't seem to be able to correct it. And it's glaring stuff that you never see from him. It's tough. I expect him to bounce back. I think most people do. I don't think this is any long-term problem, but I was pretty stunned that he did not come out on top. I thought for him to lose, someone would have to go get him, and that wasn't the case. No one really even made a move.
No, JV Holmes shot 1 under to win. Mm-hmm. Going into the last group, final day, having a 4 or 5 shot lead, you gotta shoot 1 under at minimum, and you gotta have somebody come get you, like you said. So, all right, perfect. I think that sums up pretty much last week. The only other thing that I wanted to make note of again is using the price differences on FanDuel. We talked on the show, Adam Scott, you and I both loved the price on it in FanDuel, and 9,700 opened the door for me to be able to go get Rahm, McIlroy, and JT all in the same lineup with him. I had just those 5 guys that we just mentioned there. I had a guy miss the cut, and it didn't matter. I still was able to get second. So using those price advantages, definitely take a look, and we'll get into them this week. So we'll start off. We can quickly go through the weather. Thank goodness. We're done with all that. It's going to be beautiful. 75, maybe a little bit of wind kick up, but not too much. So we don't have to focus on that. We can transition right into some marquee tee times. First one I want to talk about is Tiger, Bryson, and Abraham Answer. Probably a little bit of pressure on the local Mexican. I listened to Tiger's press conference, and they definitely love Abraham Answer down there in the local media. So what do you make of that? Tiger said it's only good things for Abraham. Are you going to play him because of it more, or was he already in your play pool, or is he not in it at all?
He's not in it at all right now. I don't think that's because of the tee time. I think, it's very hard to say. Some guys, maybe they rise to the occasion, I'm sure. But at the same time, he had enough narratives going for him. Just this is a home game. I'm sure he'd be ready for an incredibly strong field. I just don't know where he's truly stacks up in a field like this. This is a tough test. I know he's going to get 4 rounds like everyone else. And I will say, not to contradict myself right off the bat here, he is only 6,600, but I tried not to get down there. And, we're going to get into how we kind of constructed. Yeah. And of course, did I? Yeah, I'll just say right off the bat, Danny Willett is there. I preferred him. But what about you? You have a better pulse on Answer than I do, I think. I jump on him, seems at the wrong times. Did you find yourself being more attracted to him because he's got a super group?
Yeah, honestly, I like to give guys that chance. I would rather see him come out and go and play with Tiger and Bryson in the first 2 days and get that 6,600, a chance where he's just got to shoot 71 over the weekend to give me value. So I guess that's kind of my gamble there, is that I really expect him to. He's on a big stage. He's leading or one of the top 4 in President's Cup points, so we're going to see him playing that over the summer. I think this is a really big spot for him, and for me, it's worth the gamble at 6,600. But talking about Tiger and Bryson, do you like them playing together in the first 2 rounds, and is it a stack that you're looking to do this week?
I do have some combos of them. Bryson, you got the 6 guys over 10K on DraftKings. I think they're all going to have ownership. That's clear. I don't think there's going to be a massive gap. Maybe if you asked me, I would say Ricky would be the least owned. Your guess is as good as mine as who is the highest owned, but I would expect Bryson to be right in the middle there. He's the cheapest of all of them. So you can start him and Tiger, no problem. You have plenty of room. Whereas, starting JT and Bryson, now you're getting a little murkier. So I definitely have some interest as from both of them, and then a couple of together if you want to start with that correlation.
Sure. So another group that I'm sure you've looked at, I always try to. It's just fun to when I'm making lineups, just see what it would take to get the top 2 guys in it. So they're actually playing together the first 2 rounds, and they're paired with Phil Mickelson. Talking about JT and DJ here. Of those 2 guys, this is a perfect kind of correlation. We've got JT probably coming in around 15 or 16%. Again, you can view, of course, the full ownership on the site. But we've got around 15 or 16, and DJ lower than 13. So seems to maybe be a little edge in maybe both of them if you're looking to go overweight on a stance. But pin one against the other, or are you going to try and stack them even maybe just because you don't expect many people to?
I don't expect many people to do that, but I am not doing that either. It was tough. You can do it. It's not like it's impossible by any stretch, but I did not find myself pairing those 2. I do have teams that have 2 of the 10K and plus, but not those 2. In truth be told, I'm not really making an aggressive stand with either of them. I have exposure to both. I'm making enough teams where I can do that, but I may come in slightly underweight, slightly overweight, depending on where ownership truly falls. They're not going to define my week. I, no surprise, have a lot more Rory than either of them.
Yeah, and we actually can go right into his tee time. I will tell you that if you're ready to gamble a little bit because it's a no-cut event and you can buy into a guy that I wrote up this week at 6,100, and we'll talk about him on the show, Shugo Imahara. We'll get into him in a little while, but if you can find yourself going down to him, you can make a lineup with JT and DJ, and you can expect that stack to be really low owned. So if you can find the 4 other pieces, and you're playing that $5, for the 100K or the new 50K one they put out, I'm not going to tell you, you probably aren't paying the rake quite easily as if you tried to probably stack 3 of these guys.
That could get a little dicey.
That could get a little dicey if you end up finding yourself with Miller and Imahara and McLeod in the lineup. I wouldn't recommend that. Anyways, Rory is paired with Brooks, Koepka, and Bubba Watson. Power pairing here. Obviously, we're going to see a ton of these. Give me your thoughts on the pairing and what you're doing with these 3 guys.
So, obviously, I'm way overweight on Rory. Nothing super insane, but, he's one of my favorite plays. He's just playing well. I expect him to play well again. Brooks is interesting. So, I originally I'm not a huge Brooks guy. It's just he's going to be very lost, and rightfully so. He has not played much. He did not play well in Saudi Arabia. I do think there's an element of him kind of building up. He's going to start playing here and play a couple of consecutive weeks. So I may be a little early. I'm not even saying I'm coming in overweight, but I have some exposure, whereas he's a guy, if you would have asked me on Tuesday, I probably would have said I don't think I get him in. Bubba didn't make the cut for me. Didn't get there. There's too many other guys in the 8K range. But you just mentioned this. Loaded pairings all over the place this week, obviously.
Definitely. I mean, we're only missing Rose and who's the other one in the top? I forgot off the top of my head. Yeah, Rose and Day. Thank you. Yep, Rose and Day are the only guys in the top 30 not here. So obviously, totally stacked field. Interesting for me, Brooks Koepka's form is just totally off, and maybe he's just trolling us again. He'd rather just get the spotlight through his mouth right now, and then come major time, he'll beat Brooks Koepka, and he'll find himself in the tournament on Sunday. But the form is really bad. He's played against terrible fields and looked just kind of off. So maybe it's just not time for him yet. I can't get there. I would much rather much rather go down to Tiger Woods or a couple of these other guys that we just mentioned. Even Bubba, I would probably rather take the price discount and go down to Bubba this week for me. So last team I want to talk about before we get into some ownership discussion is Jordan Spieth. He's paired with Russell Knox and Satoshi Kodaira. You finding this a little bit to be a snub, maybe? Do you think that the PGA Tour... Yeah, for Knox. Do you think that maybe the PGA Tour is maybe a little fed up with the antics on the golf course? Like, this is the worst pairing we've seen Jordan Spieth in 2 years.
Yeah, it's not a good pairing.
Yeah,
Satoshi and my man Russell Knox.
And I like Russell Knox. I'm a fan, but
so do I. But even I have to say he's kind of out of place there. That's interesting. I mean, I'm sure he's not thrilled that he's not in one of the super groups. You could put him with Ricky. You could put him with
Rob. Any of them.
Yeah, any of them. It'll be interesting. I'll add some because I do have a lot of Russell Knox. There's not a lot, but I'm over on Russell Knox.
Yes, well, yeah.
I think this course does fit his game, so we'll see. Maybe the one thing I'll say with Spieth, and he's got his struggles right now, but he's still an elite player. I do think there's something advantageous to playing with guys that are similar in your skill set. Like if he was playing with, not that Champ is here, but say Champ and Dustin, and it's like they're driving it so much further.
Yeah.
Like Knox, that's a similar type of guy. I think they can get. It helps with the correlation in terms of if they get going, it's similar shots, similar lines.
Especially if they're right on that notion, and this brings up a next point that I'll kind of talk about Spieth just for a minute, is that if you're paying attention and you're hitting the ball in similar spots, with the altitude changes, you can pick up what club the guy is using next to you, especially if you're hitting the same yardages. You can pick up a little bit. However, he doesn't have his caddy. Michael Greller, his father passed away, and sad. I feel terrible for Michael Greller. So he's actually got his dad on the bag because obviously he didn't have much of his team traveling with him. So my resume didn't get to him in time, obviously. So he's got his dad on the bag. Altitude changes. I mean, it's definitely a tough spot, but it's going to be Jordan obviously doing a bulk of the work. It'll be interesting to watch that dynamic, and if Jordan tries to pick up a little bit more on Russell Knox's shots due to that.
Interesting. That's good to know. I do have I assume you have a lot more Spieth than I do this week. Sandwiched between Finau and Leishman, who to me are firmly in play, but it's the delicate balance, and it's a dangerous game. Sure. As guys struggle, the ownership continues to drop. The price, depending on what it does with the site's algorithm, can stay the same, and you're going to get more leverage if you do think that the guy is close to kind of putting it all together. So I get the narrative for playing some Spieth. Going to get 4 rounds, and he's been scoring. He just hasn't. He's got to avoid these blow up rounds, obviously.
Yep, and I will say that in my article, for me, the $5 when I see that $100K up top and I see Spieth ownership at 5%, I can't stay away from it. If I have him at 60%. The $400 risk there for me. I'm probably going to take it most weeks just because of the dividends that he's paid me over the years. So maybe eventually I'll probably come off of that, but it'll take more than this. So let's transition into some ownership talks. And it looks like, and we started right off the top, JT and Rahm look like they're going to be 15%. Rory, DJ, Ricky all at 12%. Do you like that? I'll definitely give you my thoughts right after, but This is the type of ownership I love.
It's nice in the sense that it's tough. It's a double-edged sword, obviously. I do like that everyone kind of is pretty flat across the board. You're not forced to kind of say, wow, if this guy's going to be 4%, that's something you have to look at. And on the other side, like if Dustin Johnson's going to be 40% and you like him, well, now you're put to the decision right off the bat of like, do you want to allocate so much to get leverage? You can take smaller positions here and not let it define you, which is nice. And the other benefit is I can say for me, Rory, like if I take 40% Rory here, that's sizable. I don't need to go nuts because everyone's going to be kind of spread out. And that does make the other price points a little more pertinent in terms of where you can make your stand. So is that kind of what you feel? I know you said you like this rather than the more erratic ownership up top.
Definitely. And one of the reasons, especially with these top guys, especially, is that if one of them ends up winning, you're not going to get burned that bad. Like, let's just say, for example, JT ends up winning and he's 17%. And let's say you and I take half the field or even a third of the field. You're not going to end up getting burned that much if the other parts of your lineups are good in quality because he's the highest owned guy. The highest priced guy. And his ownership is not ginormous where, it's if you don't have him in your lineup, you don't cash. I think this week you can probably get away with that. We are going to get a little bit more chalky, though, as we move down. And these next 5 guys are all going to be 20%. And I'm talking Tiger, Bryson, Hideki, Xander, and Tony. And on the ownership, we've got them all at 18 to 20%. That's getting a little bit higher. Can I get you to take a stand against one of them, and can I get you to go overweight on one of them?
So obviously, when ownership projects like this, you want to be cognizant of what tournaments you're in, because in the 444 this week, that's some of these guys are going to creep way higher and some will be slightly lower.
Definitely.
The $5 I think will be naturally more flat as you're describing.
Yep.
Bryson to me is the one, if I have to go into the 30s or something like that, I'm pretty comfortable there. He's just, even when he didn't seem to have it last week, he 15th, that's not great, but he certainly has such a good floor built in. And obviously when he gets rolling, it's really good. Maybe one of the best right now. Xander's the guy, even when I want to play him, I don't know if I can get 20% of him in my lineups. I get it. I think he's a fine play. I do have some, but you only get 600% total, obviously.
Yep.
I would love to take 30% of all these guys and get over, but it doesn't work with the math. So it's too tricky. Xander's probably the one I don't think I'm going to get there.
Yeah, and I think this is where you can probably get site specific, where Justin Thomas, 12K on FanDuel, I'll probably end up with 5 to 10% of them on DraftKings, and I'll probably end up with 50% or 40% of them on FanDuel because the pricing just allows me to. So I think you can get site specific there, and your total allocation of bankroll for the week. If you're right on par with the total ownership of him, you're not going to get burned by him if one ends up winning and you fade him at a place. So I am going overweight on Tiger Woods this week at 9,500. I think he has just as good a chance to win as the guys before him. Proximity numbers from the fairway looked really good last week. I believe he was first and second in the field in that statistic, and that's just one that I like. I know that there's some differences there, and they're not always shooting for the pin, but I think it's a good stat to measure up with strokes gained approach. And the strokes gained approach wasn't fantastic last week, so there may be a little bit of difference there, a little bit of negative correlation. But still, putting was his woes last week, and we know that's going to change. So, yeah, 9,500, I think Tiger's really close to prime to win. He's going to be my overweight.
So with Tiger, I'm going to have some because I think Tiger's firmly in play these days, not as high as you. Do you worry at all? The two concerns I think that are pretty obvious. One, there was a lot of golf in a short amount of time last week. Yep. And two, he has not played here with the altitude. Do you worry about that? Or are you just saying it's Tiger? That's, he can, if there's one guy who could figure it out, it's probably him. I
would be willing to say that if there's any golfer that I'm going to bet on for the first time coming here, it's always going to be Tiger. It's, I just feel like maybe Bryson, honestly, now because because he's legitimately a scientist. And I think that Tiger may try and play a little dumb, and that new commercial that they have together actually is kind of pins Tiger as that. But Tiger is sneaky prepared always. And, if you read some of the books that have been written about him, you can tell that. So I'm not worried at all. He was talking in his interview, not going to lie, about that specific thing, and that he was hitting wedge from 180. Think about that. He was hitting 5-iron from 175 last week. So there's going to be an adjustment, but it's Tiger. So if we're talking one or two strokes, I think it probably affects most people that way. So no, I don't put any stock in it. And I think that the price difference that you're getting, I'm starting a lot of my lineups with Tiger Woods this week.
If you do that, obviously, when we're talking construction, starting the nines, it really obviously is going to help the back end. You don't have to take the Alexander Bjorks of the world if you don't want to, which there's certainly a case to be made that that's the way to go.
Yeah, there is, and I will say in the $5 for sure, I will have Tiger with one of the guys higher above him, and then likely one of the guys that's in the 8K range, and plug in a lot of those low sevens and high sixes that I like for construction wise, because that's what you got to look for in this $5. Last year it was Ross Fisher, it was Sharma. I always screw up his first name, so I think it's Sharma. Yeah, but it's Sharma, and those were the two guys. You had them in your field. If you could pair them together with your core, obviously you did very well. So I'm looking to do something similar this week. Next batch of guys, though, that I wanted to talk about, two guys. We know that Jordan Spieth's going to be like 6% on, somewhere in that. And somebody that's going to be close is the reigning Open champion, Molinari. I know he's been terrible. We haven't seen him a lot, but does that ownership get you excited?
Obviously it's tempting because you can say I can take 10%. I don't have to worry about him. If he wins, if he does something, boom. And if he's terrible, you're playing with 10% of less of your lineups.
Yeah, you're paying the rent. Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying the rent. It is what it is. So I may splash. Tommy Fleetwood is certainly in my core this week. I really like him. The guy who I think could be sneaky popular, especially at some of the higher stakes, is Sergio. Seen him picking up some steam. I do like him. I'm not super keen to play like 25% own Sergio. I don't know if it creeps up that high, but what do you think about him? And I want to pass it back to you with Molinari. I do think he's an interesting guy to talk about. We just haven't really seen him. He's out of sight, out of mind, kind of.
Definitely, and when he's been in play, it hasn't been very good. So I'm nervous. I'm not going to get it above 10%, but I am going to plug him in at 10% just because he might come in even lower than 5%. Honestly, he's right. He's priced right around Fleetwood and Spieth and all those other guys. And if people are going to pass on Spieth, how are they going to be able to play Molinari, I guess is my question. And I don't think it happens. So I'm going to give him 10%. Sergio is one that I'm really struggling with because he played well enough. His approaches looked good last week. He squeaked by the cut. Couldn't get any momentum going over the weekend, though. I just think that there's probably better spots. I like Tommy Fleetwood more. I like Webb Simpson more. And I like Gary Woodland more. However, all three of those guys I think are going to be really chalky. I think probably the three chalkiest guys of the week, possibly. Definitely Tommy Fleetwood and Gary Woodland, I think, are the two chalkiest. So are we eating the chalk there, or are we pivoting to, say, Sergio at like 13 or 14%?
With Woodland, there's a lot of viable pivots, both higher and lower. So he's a guy I think I'll probably get. It's not like I'm not playing Woodland in spots, but I could see myself going elsewhere. Fleetwood is going to be a guy that I use. I have to ask you, obviously, we can't skip over Patrick Cantlay, your boy. What about him?
Yeah, he's mid-ownership. He really couldn't get it going, and then all of a sudden I look at the leaderboards, and he's at top 15. I mean, it's just kind of what he does. He just quietly stays around. He makes a bogey, makes two birdies. Makes a bogey, makes two birdies. Course seems like it should be decent for him. I mean, he's a long, straight driver. I mean, he's not top 25 on tour, but he's top 50 on tour in driving distance. We don't think driving distance is going to matter that much. More accuracy will. Approaches, looked decent. Let me just pull up the numbers on Cantlay really quick. Obviously, for me, I have a standard auto 30% in GPPs for Cantlay and my guys, Cantlay, Woods, and Spieth. It's just an auto 30. But the approaches have looked good. It's his putting that's been bad. So, yeah, I don't see a problem with him. I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to be 80% of him because I don't know. I guess maybe I should be. But
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's for me. He just hasn't shown the top 5 upside that I would want to see to say, you know what, guys, I'm all in on Cantlay. If it was Tiger Woods, Cantlay, and Dustin Johnson were the 3 stars of the field, I would be all in on Cantlay. But we've got a loaded field, so I just can't see myself getting more than 40%.
Fair enough. And it's tough. Like I said, the fields like this all the time, people get questions. They're asking about, this guy. The truth be told, you go above 8K, these guys are all world-class players, and if they get going, they're going to be there. There's no doubt about it. You can't play them all. You got to leave some guys out, and it is very tricky. So someone like Cantlay, someone like Paul Casey, they're just there. I used them in certain spots, but it was tough to say this is the time where I'm really going to make I'm right in line with you. I just didn't see the need to make a very aggressive play with someone like that in a non-cut in such a strong field.
Sure. Let's talk about two pivots from this range that I think maybe in play. I don't know that I'm going to play a lot of either of these guys, but definitely pivots, definitely under 10% owned. Well, I shouldn't say that because who knows what the hell's going to happen.
It's wild,
yeah,
projects at least.
But projection is Patrick Reed and Ian Poulter, both kind of bad guys, kind of villains of each side of the pond. Looks like they should be under 10% owned. Did you get to either of them? Poulter looks ridiculously good in his last 3 starts. Patrick Reed's kind of being Patrick Reed, top 15s, nothing really great. You get to either of them?
I didn't really get to Patrick Reed much, maybe a sliver at best. I'm just not really sure where his game is at. It's been sluggish. I usually like to target him, and with mixed results. Poulter, it does set up well.
Yeah.
I really don't like that guy, but
see, that's the thing, right?
It does, and it's good to target those guys because people don't like to play people they don't like. He is certainly one of the pivots off Woodland. To me, there are other guys, RCB, Benny on that range that you can look to. Kuchar going to Mexico, I think, is a pretty interesting dynamic. I don't mind that. So Poulter is in play for me, but there's other guys that I do like more, particularly in that high 7s.
Sure, and kind of the next batch of underneath this chalk that's going to be in that 15% range that I think is a fine pivot, especially if Woodland could, the higher up you go, he could be 25, 30% at that price. Maybe even higher, if you're playing in the 444 like Ben mentioned, or even the 1500, he could get up to 40 quite easily at that price. Okay. We've seen him higher at higher prices. So with that being said, with the next batch of guys, you mentioned 2 of them, Kuchar and Cabrera Bello. And the third one that I wanted to bring up, Charles Howell. Of those 3, who's your favorite? All going to be around 12 to 15% projected by us, the guys at Awesemo. Where are you seeing of those 3? Sounds like maybe Cabrera Bello?
Yeah, I think so. I've been playing him, so there is something to that. I do think he's kind of building. He had a weird Genesis. I don't know how great that course was for him anyway. He putted well. He scrambled well. Irons weren't as crisp as I wanted them to be. It would probably be him. I do think Kuchar's in a pretty good spot. Playing well. He really is. There's no doubt about it. And then CH3 is also playing well. Credit to him. He's just the guy that I don't know. He loses some of his luster because it's a non-cut. The consistency isn't as important because everyone's going to get the 72 holes. You're going to need some upside from him. And he's shown more of that, of course, this year. But on the macro level, I still feel like more often than not, he gives you a middling performance.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. And I'm going to take Cabrera Bello in the 3 there as well. I just think it sets up best for him. Of those 3, and we're kind of packaging them together in the ownership range in which they're going to be in and kind of the price range. So the next 3 I want to talk about is a little further down the list. All these guys are going to be around 15%. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I'm not playing any of the 3 of them at this point. Yeah, very, very small. And when I say not playing, like 1 or 2% sprinkles because these guys are good enough players to be in a player pool in a no-cut event. But it's Cam Smith, who I have been playing a lot of, but the ownership's been skyrocketing, and I'm ready to get off that train if people are continuing to jump on. Ty Hatton, who's quite erratic, but it seems like he's a good fit here and played well here last year. And then Mr. Stenson, who is a withdrawal candidate, but, man, he's so cheap at 7,200. Again, like I said, I'm not playing any of them. What of your 3 is the favorite? And do you like any of them, or are you kind of in my camp?
So that will be, I talk about it all the time. You want to know where your leverage is. If you get that right, you're going to be at a huge advantage because I think Cam Smith and Stenson just because of the name, Cam Smith because of the price drop, are going to be very popular. I'm with you on Ty Hatton. He did not make it. I think I might have like a share, but Cam Smith, you're getting off the train. I'm taking your seat. I have not been playing him. Jumping on now, I'm hopeful that he does have a world-class short game, putts well. Want him to be better, obviously, off the tee and whatnot. So I took some stabs there. Stenson, I'm going to kind of middle with you. I have some exposure. If he's super popular, I'm coming in under. The form has just been very bad. I know it's Stenson, and you take a long view, and he's an incredible player, but he was awful during the Mid-East swing. He was just absolutely horrible.
All miscuts. Yep.
Yep. So, and you've mentioned you can't really predict withdrawals, but he is someone that if he gets off to a very rocky start, that's bad. He's in the Usti bucket of things can go south very quickly. I'm buying on Usti and Stenson. I don't want zero of him, but I do say that I don't think I can get to 30% or anything to get a significant amount of leverage.
Yeah, and I'm kind of there with you. I can't play him at all. I mean, I'm gonna have him in literally one or two lineups this week. It's just not there for me. I would rather have Stenson beat me, I guess, this week than try and jump on Stenson being back trained, early. So I guess that's where I'm heading. And with Cam Smith, the thing I'm concerned about fading him is I believe the ownership is going to be very high. So here's it, and I'll only just diverge from what we're doing for a minute, and we'll jump back in and continue going down the price list. But I want to talk about the odds for a second and talk about the betting side of this just for a minute, because Cam Smith is 66 to 1. So if I'm looking at it from a perspective of, all right, he's going to be 25%. If I want to take 5% and fade him, where am I going to get beat? I'm going to get beat on a top 10 or a top 5, or obviously if he wins. Well, at 66 to 1, I can definitely cover a lot of what I'm playing on DraftKings, going to the betting side of this. Would you condone that strategy, or you tell me I'm just crazy to do something like that?
No, there's something to that. I think you want to be very cognizant, because I've certainly had people, this came up in Slack before a little with RCB, and you just want to know who you're doing with it, because there's a difference between DraftKings and win equity. Sometimes a guy, Charles Howell was obviously a perfect example, then he just won, but like he was a very good DraftKings play in numerous tournaments, and he did not win for like 10 years. Then there's other guys, Siwoo Kim comes to mind, where he misses cuts all over, and then he actually just wins tournaments. Yep. So win equity, you can do that with certain guys. Cam Smith obviously is good enough where I totally see what you're saying. And I do that sometimes where I say really big ownership on DraftKings. This guy is I prefer to do that with cuts, because I think I can get super rewarded, because if you're betting a guy to win, if he gets cut or he comes in sixth, it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
So you do want that bonus. So you can hedge like that. You just want to make sure you're doing it where you say, okay, I have two kind of outs, and I'm not going to get burned too many times where he's still a good DraftKings play, yet I lose my bet.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about Rafa Cabrera-Bello on the odds for just a minute. In the Slack chat, it was brought up earlier that it was very interesting. He was drifting the wrong way. He opened at 60, went to 80. And the question that was asked to us was, why does this happen, and what can we do? Is it actionable? Well, first thing is, and I think you and I are both kind of on the same wavelength, is why does it happen is there's probably just not enough energy. There's not enough people betting it at 60 to 1. So the odds makers want a little bit of action. But there could be a lot of other factors as well. Do you try and use this information at all to your advantage? And if so, how?
I don't, to be honest. I take a quick look just to make sure there's nothing glaring. If there's a guy in the mid sixes and he's priced to win with guys in the nines, obviously,
yep.
You want to be cognizant of that. But I don't really look, if a guy's 65 to 1 and he moves to 80 to 1, I really don't read that much into it. It doesn't change my narratives too much, especially with a guy like, for me, RCB is more in the consistency camp than someone who just like comes out of nowhere and wins a tournament and then kind of has a bad stretch. I don't really think of him as that like super volatile player. So his odds to win, I think they could be dictated by a lot of things. I'd be more apt to look at, head-to-heads against some of my potential pivots, things like that. Vegas is important, but the win equity to me is not a huge tiebreaker at best.
Yeah, just getting some notes that I guess we're definitely trying to weed through the chats and make sure we get the right ones here.
We got you, people.
Yeah. Apologies. All right, so let's keep going down the list. I've got some next one, and these two, you mentioned one of this guy, and I am also on him this week. The other guy I'm not on, but they're going to be surprisingly pretty low, on 5 to 7%, and I'm talking Benny on, and we can both start with him. I'll give you the floor, and then Billy Horschel. I want you to just give me a couple notes. We're talking 5%, so definitely some leverage spots here. I'll have you start with. You can pick either guy. I know you like Benny, but I'll have you start with either guy.
Yeah, Benny. I just think anyone who can strike the ball, especially with the irons the way he can, I'm just going to take some shares of him. The putting's horrendous. It's probably going to be like when he loses 6 strokes putting. Don't be surprised. He's a bad putter. You just hope he can hold his own. Billy Horschel really is the forgotten man. It wasn't that long ago